How fragile is a perfect reputation? What happens when the life someone meticulously builds is revealed to be a carefully constructed lie, exposed for the entire world to witness? Consider the town of Oakhaven, a community known for its pristine homes, quiet streets, and the comforting rhythm of suburban success. It presented an image of stability, a place where families thrived and community leaders were genuinely respected. On the surface, everything appeared exactly as it should be. But how often does the polished exterior conceal something troubling underneath? Think about the communities you know, the successful figures you read about. Have you ever sensed a disconnect between the public face and the private reality? Have you wondered about the pressures people face to maintain that flawless image, and what compromises they might make in the shadows? It's a common human experience to present our best selves, but sometimes the effort to hide the truth can lead down a destructive path. This story centers on such a path. It involves a man celebrated by his town, admired for his achievements, and his seemingly perfect family life. It also involves a long-held hidden relationship, kept secret for years. But when that secret was suddenly thrust into the open, exposed through the inescapable lens of social media, the consequences were not just embarrassment or divorce. They were violent. They were final. The fallout would shake Oakhaven to its core, proving that the most devastating implosions can happen in the quietest places. How could a man perceived as a pillar of his community commit an act of irreversible violence? What pressures, secrets, and personality flaws converged to create such a tragedy? Here on TrueCrime, Hunter, we explore these complex situations. Stay with us as we examine the story of Marcus Bellwether, the affair that broke the silence, and the terrible cost of exposure. Before we get into the details, if you find stories exploring the complexities of human nature and the consequences of our choices compelling, please show your support by hitting that like button, and make sure you subscribe to TrueCrime, Hunter, so you don't miss future investigations. At the center of Oakhaven's social sphere stood Marcus Bellwether. An architect by trade, his designs shaped the town's affluent landscape, his name synonymous with upscale living and modern elegance. Publicly, Marcus projected effortless charm and confidence. He was a fixture at town events, quick with a smile, generous with donations, embodying the ideal of a successful family man and community leader. His business thrived on this carefully cultivated persona. Referrals flowed freely from neighbors and town officials who saw him as a man of integrity and vision. Few people, however, glimpsed the reality beneath the surface. A demanding perfectionism that extended far beyond his blueprints, a need for absolute control over his environment and his image, and a temper that could flare unexpectedly when challenged. Maintaining the appearance of a flawless life wasn't just desirable for Marcus, it felt essential. Beside him stood Olivia Bellwether. With quiet grace and elegance, she complemented Marcus's public energy. As chair of the Oakhaven Historical Society and a dedicated mother to their teenagers, Leo and Clara, Olivia was respected in her own right. She moved through the town's social circles with poise, seemingly content in her role, upholding the family's esteemed position. Whether her contentment was genuine or simply another layer of the polished facade the Bellwethers presented was difficult to discern. She appeared devoted to her family and her community duties, perhaps unaware of or choosing not to see the pressures building within her own home. Oakhaven itself fostered an environment where appearances were paramount. It was a town built on success, where manicured lawns reflected social standing and deviations from the norm were subtly discouraged. Reputation wasn't just about personal pride, it was social currency, influencing everything from business deals to school friendships. In this setting, the Bellwethers were seen as aspirational figures, their life the benchmark many aimed for. They represented the Oakhaven dream realized. For Marcus, therefore, the stakes were incredibly high. Any significant crack in his public image wouldn't just cause personal embarrassment, it threatened to demolish everything he had built. His architectural firm depended heavily on the trust and admiration of the Oakhaven elite. His social standing was intrinsically linked to his perceived integrity. His family life, the very picture of suburban stability, was the cornerstone of his identity. Any revelation of profound hypocrisy could cost him his business, his status, his family, the entire world he had so meticulously constructed around himself. He had everything to lose. 7 years before the Oak Haven facade would shatter, Marcus Bellwether's carefully managed world developed a hidden fault line. Her name was Isabella Moreau, though most knew her as Izzy. She wasn't native to Oak Haven's established circles. She had arrived 5 years prior, a graphic designer with a bright, creative energy and an optimistic view of her future. Compared to Olivia's composed reserve, Izzy was vibrant, expressive, perhaps a little naive about the town's intricate social dynamics. Their paths crossed when Marcus's firm hired her agency for a project. He was immediately drawn to her vitality, a stark contrast to his controlled home life. For Izzy, the attention from the older, successful, and charming architect was initially flattering, intoxicating even. The affair ignited quickly, fueled by clandestine meetings and the thrill of the forbidden. Marcus pursued her with intensity, showering her with the kind of focused attention that made her feel uniquely seen. He confided in her, painting a picture of a lonely marriage, describing Olivia as emotionally distant, someone he remained with purely out of obligation to their children and his public standing. He spoke of a future, however vaguely, where they could eventually be together. Izzy, caught up in the narrative and the connection she felt, believed him. She saw herself not as a homewrecker, but as the person who truly understood the complex man Marcus Bellwether presented himself to be. But the initial excitement inevitably faded, replaced by the burdensome weight of secrecy. Their connection became confined to the shadows. Communication required burner phones and discreet email accounts. Meetings were snatched moments in impersonal hotel rooms miles away or quick encounters in secluded parking lots, always dictated by Marcus's schedule and his assessment of risk. Holidays, birthdays, significant life events. Izzy often spent them alone, receiving only a brief, coded message, if anything at all. Marcus's control tightened. He dictated the terms of their interactions, growing impatient and easily angered if Izzy expressed needs or frustrations that threatened his carefully compartmentalized life. Over the years, Izzy's life became increasingly defined by the affair's limitations. Potential relationships were bypassed, friendships sometimes strained by her unavailability or unexplained absences. Career opportunities that required more visibility or travel were cautiously navigated or avoided. The vibrant young woman who arrived in Oak Haven felt herself diminishing, her optimism slowly replaced by a gnawing resentment. She saw Marcus feted in the local paper, posing with Olivia at charity functions, lauded for the very integrity he betrayed with every secret meeting. The disparity between the public Marcus and the private man she knew became a source of constant, quiet anguish. She wasn't his partner. She was his liability, a secret to be managed. The feeling of being trapped, used, and perpetually hidden began to fester, building a pressure that couldn't be contained forever. In the months leading up to the Oak Haven Founders' Day Gala, the dynamic between Marcus and Izzy shifted further. His attention, once intoxicating, became increasingly scarce. His replies to her messages grew shorter, his excuses for unavailability more frequent and less convincing. Izzy felt the distance acutely, a growing sense of being pushed further into the margins of his life, treated less like a confidant and more like an inconvenient obligation. Her requests for his time were often met with irritation or outright dismissal. The resentment that had simmered for years began to reach a dangerous temperature. The Founders' Day Gala was the premier social event of the Oak Haven calendar, and this year, Olivia Bellwether herself was the chairperson. It was an evening designed to celebrate the town's history and its leading citizens. Marcus, naturally, was expected to be prominently featured, the successful architect and devoted husband supporting his elegant wife. He received an award that night for his contributions to community development. Accepting it with his characteristic charm, Olivia beaming proudly at his side. He was the picture of civic virtue and marital contentment. For Izzy, however, that weekend was marked by Marcus's claim of an unavoidable family commitment that made seeing her impossible. Alone, scrolling through social media later that evening, she saw the photos from the gala flooding her feed. There was Marcus, bathed in the warm glow of public admiration, arms securely around Olivia, accepting accolades for his integrity. The stark contrast between the lie he had told her and the reality of his celebrated public life struck Izzy with the force of a physical blow. Years of swallowed hurt, loneliness, and the indignity of being his hidden secret coalesced into a potent mix of anger and betrayal. It was more than just this single instance. It was the culmination of 7 years of deception, of whispered promises never kept, of feeling invisible while he basked in the spotlight. In that moment, seeing him lauded for the very qualities he lacked in his private dealings with her, something within Izzy snapped. The need to keep his secret, a burden she had carried for so long, was suddenly eclipsed by an overwhelming compulsion for the truth to be known. It wasn't calculated revenge, perhaps, but a desperate, impulsive act fueled by profound emotional pain, a cry for validation and an attempt to reclaim some power by shattering the illusion he held so dear. That night, sitting alone with the glow of her screen illuminating her face, Izzy Moreau logged on to a social media profile Marcus didn't know existed. It was a space where she shared her art and occasional commentary, followed by a mix of old friends and newer Oak Haven acquaintances. Her first posts were oblique, hinting at hypocrisy among the town's elite, speaking of carefully constructed images hiding uncomfortable truths. Then, the tone shifted. The posts became more pointed, referencing a long-term deception orchestrated by a prominent local figure. Finally, she unleashed the proof. Screenshots of intimate text messages appeared, revealing pet names and private jokes. Dates and locations of clandestine meetings were listed. Details only someone deeply involved could possibly know were laid bare. She tagged Marcus Bellwether's professional business page and several popular Oak Haven community forums, ensuring maximum visibility. While not naming Olivia directly, she alluded to the dedicated wife kept completely unaware of her husband's lengthy betrayal. The effect was instantaneous and incendiary. Across Oak Haven, phone screens lit up. Notifications pinged relentlessly. In living rooms, offices, and cafes, people scrolled, their eyes widening. Izzy's posts were shared, screenshotted, and forwarded within minutes. The comment section exploded with speculation, shock, and judgment. The carefully maintained quiet of Oak Haven was shattered by a digital shockwave. Gossip, once confined to hushed whispers, now blazed across public feeds for all to see. Marcus was presenting designs in a crucial afternoon meeting when his phone, set to vibrate on the polished conference table, began buzzing without pause. Annoyed by the interruption, he glanced down. He saw his name tagged, saw snippets of Izzy's words, saw the rapidly climbing notification count. A chill, unlike anything he'd ever felt, washed over him. His carefully constructed reality was detonating publicly, right now. The blood drained from his face. His colleagues exchanged uneasy looks as he abruptly excused himself, mumbling about an emergency, his mind reeling with a potent cocktail of sheer panic and blinding rage. How could she do this? How could she destroy everything? Meanwhile, Olivia Bellwether was at home sorting through mail, completely unaware of the storm breaking online. Her phone rang. A close friend, her voice tight with distress, urging Olivia to check Facebook immediately. Olivia, usually dismissive of online drama, sensed the genuine alarm in her friend's tone. Hesitantly, she logged into her account. Her feed was dominated by Izzy's posts. She saw the screenshots, read the intimate words exchanged between her husband and this other woman, saw the timeline of betrayal laid out. The floor seemed to drop beneath her. The man she had built her life with, the father of Leo and Clara, felt like a stranger. The breath caught in her throat as the weight of the deception, years of it, crashed down on her. Her world wasn't just cracking, it was disintegrating before her eyes. This story took a devastating turn, amplified dramatically by modern technology. How do you think social media changes the nature of secrets and their consequences in today's world? Does instant exposure make things better or worse? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. Bursting out of the office building into the afternoon sun, Marcus Bellwether felt the carefully constructed walls of his life collapsing inwards. The initial shock quickly curdled into a potent, consuming rage. It wasn't directed at his own choices, his years of deceit, but squarely at Izzy Moreau. In his mind, distorted by panic and a lifetime of prioritizing his own image, she was no longer a person with her own pain or motivations. She was simply the saboteur, the one who had dared to pull the pin on his perfectly assembled world. He felt cornered, exposed, and the sensation he hated most, loss of control, was absolute. Reason evaporated, replaced by a primal urge to regain command, to silence the source of his public humiliation. He reached his car, yanking the door open, engine roaring to life moments later. He sped away from the curb, weaving through traffic with reckless abandon. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. 7 years, he thought. 7 years I managed this. Kept everything separate. Protected everyone. He conveniently ignored the inherent contradiction. She knew the rules. She knew what was at stake. How could she be so stupid, so selfish? His internal monologue was a torrent of blame, a desperate attempt to reframe himself as the victim of her irrational act. She did this. She ruined everything. My business, my family, Olivia, the kids. The potential consequences flashed before him, not as results of his actions, but as damages inflicted solely by Izzy. His eyes flicked towards the glove compartment. He knew what was inside, nestled beneath the vehicle registration and insurance papers. A handgun, purchased years ago, ostensibly for protection during site visits to remote locations. He hadn't thought about it in months, but now its presence felt significant, a weight in the periphery of his consciousness. It represented a final, drastic form of control, a way to permanently stop the exposure, to erase the problem. The thought, once unthinkable, now lodged itself in his mind, fueled by his escalating fury and desperation. Meanwhile, in her apartment on the other side of Oakhaven, Izzy Moreau likely sat amidst the digital fallout she had unleashed. Perhaps she felt a tremor of fear, knowing Marcus's temper. Perhaps she felt a surge of defiant justification, believing the truth, however painful, needed to be aired. Maybe she was fielding calls or messages from shocked acquaintances. Whatever her exact state, she was almost certainly unaware of the specific, lethal rage accelerating towards her doorstep. She had exposed a secret, expecting social or marital consequences, not realizing she had pushed a man obsessed with control past his breaking point, towards an act of ultimate, irreversible violence. As Marcus's car ate up the miles separating them, his purpose solidified. He wasn't going there to talk, he was going there to end it. Marcus slammed his car door and stormed towards Izzy's second-floor apartment, taking the stairs 2 at a time. He reached her door and pounded on it, the force rattling the frame. When Izzy opened it, perhaps expecting a shouting match or desperate pleas, she was met with a fury she hadn't seen before. His face was contorted, his eyes blazing. "Take it down, Izzy! Delete it all, right now!" he roared, pushing past her into the small living room. His presence filled the space, charged with aggression. Izzy stumbled back, startled but holding her ground. Her voice trembled, but held a note of finality. "No, Marcus, it's done. People need to see who you really are. Olivia deserves the truth." "The truth?" he spat, his voice thick with rage. You stupid, selfish girl! You've destroyed everything! My life! My family! He saw her phone lying on the coffee table, a symbol of her defiance, of the exposure he couldn't contain. His control, already frayed, snapped completely. The carefully maintained image was gone, replaced by raw, unrestrained fury. In one swift movement, he reached into the waistband of his trousers and pulled out the handgun. Izzy's eyes widened in disbelief, then stark terror. Any words she might have formed caught in her throat. He raised the weapon, the polished metal catching the afternoon light filtering through the window. The sharp crack of the gunshot reverberated violently within the confines of the apartment. Izzy collapsed to the floor. An abrupt, heavy silence fell, broken only by Marcus's ragged breathing. He stood frozen for a moment, the gun still extended, staring down at the irreversible outcome of his rage. The problem he had come to solve was silenced, permanently. The echo of the gunshot faded, leaving Marcus Bellwether alone in the sudden, profound quiet of Izzy Moreau's apartment. The blinding rage that had propelled him there began to recede, replaced by a cold, sharp panic. The finality of his action, the sight of Izzy lifeless on the floor, hit him not with remorse, but with the urgent need to escape. He turned, fumbling with the doorknob, his movements jerky and uncoordinated. He hurried out of the apartment, glancing nervously down the hallway before descending the stairs, desperate to get away, to put distance between himself and what he had done. His exit, however, was not unnoticed. A neighbor, startled by the loud bang preceded by shouting, peered through their window just in time to see Marcus hurrying towards his car and speeding away. Recognizing the prominent architect, the neighbor quickly dialed 911, reporting the disturbance and providing a description. Police units arrived within minutes. They found the door to Izzy's apartment slightly ajar and discovered the tragic scene inside. A description of Marcus Bellwether and his vehicle was immediately broadcast across police channels. Less than an hour later, patrol officers spotted his car on a highway leading out of the county. He was pulled over and apprehended without resistance. The murder weapon recovered from inside his vehicle. News of the murder and Marcus Bellwether's arrest sent shockwaves through Oak Haven, eclipsing even the initial scandal of the affair. The story spread rapidly, moving from local news alerts to regional and even national headlines. The respected architect, the pillar of the community, was now an accused killer. The Bellwether name, once a symbol of Oak Haven aspiration, became instantly synonymous with betrayal and violence. The town reeled, forced to confront the disturbing reality that had existed beneath the tranquil surface. For Olivia Bellwether and her children, Leo and Clara, the nightmare intensified. Already grappling with the profound personal betrayal, they now faced the horrific public reality of Marcus's crime. Olivia withdrew completely, focusing solely on protecting her children from the relentless media attention and the whispers that followed them. The social standing they once enjoyed vanished overnight, replaced by pity, morbid curiosity, and judgment. Their lives were irrevocably altered, burdened by the trauma inflicted by the man they called husband and father. Marcus Bellwether's trial was a somber affair. His defense attorneys attempted to portray the killing as a crime of passion, an impulsive act driven by the extreme emotional distress of public humiliation and the perceived destruction of his life. The prosecution, however, presented a compelling case, detailing the years of deception, the controlling nature Marcus exhibited, and arguing that the murder was a calculated decision made to permanently silence Izzy Moreau and prevent further damage to his precious reputation. The evidence, including the social media posts that served as a catalyst, witness accounts, and Marcus's attempt to flee, proved overwhelming. The jury returned a verdict of guilty on the charge of first-degree murder. Marcus Bellwether was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In his desperate, violent attempt to save his reputation, he had ensured its absolute and permanent ruin. The Oak Haven tragedy serves as a chilling exploration of several potent themes. It starkly illustrates the immense danger of prioritizing a flawless public image above genuine integrity. Marcus Bellwether's obsession with maintaining his facade became the driving force behind his deceit, and ultimately, his violence. His story underscores the corrosive effect of long-term deception, not just on the person being deceived, but on the deceiver themselves, warping their perspective and justifying terrible actions. Furthermore, the events highlight the unpredictable power of modern communication. Social media didn't create the conflict, but it provided the platform for an exposure so rapid and widespread that it pushed a volatile situation towards catastrophe. It reminds us that even in the most outwardly normal settings, behind closed doors, destructive potential can exist. What can we learn from this devastating sequence of events? Perhaps the most crucial takeaway is the fundamental importance of honesty, not just with others, but with ourselves. Living authentically, even with imperfections, builds a foundation far stronger than any carefully constructed lie. The story also serves as a harsh warning about the consequences of unchecked ego and a desperate need for control. When maintaining an image becomes more important than human life, the capacity for harm is immense. Recognizing controlling behaviors and manipulative tendencies, whether in ourselves or others, can be critical. The perfect picture Oakhaven presented, the ideal life embodied by the Bellwethers, was ultimately revealed as a fragile illusion, shattered by the weight of secrets and the violence born from desperation. It's a somber reminder that reality is often far more complex than appearances suggest. This story is a stark reminder of how quickly lives can be irrevocably changed by choices rooted in deception and ego. What lesson stands out most to you from the Oakhaven tragedy? Share this video if you think others could benefit from reflecting on these themes. For more true crime narratives that explore the depths of human behavior and the important lessons we can draw from them, make sure you subscribe to TrueCrime, Hunter, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next story. Thank you for watching.